and good morning. Haiti Oropesa, we are live. Good morning. I already had my Cuban coffee. I feel good. And today we have Lisa McLean, who is going to run in next year's election cycle, 2024, for Hillsborough County Public Defender. There are two candidates in this race, and so she's with us this morning. I am joined by my colleague, Joshua Montero. Hi, Joshua. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. And so, my new co-host, Daryl Heish, who, good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hey, good morning, Josh, Lisa. How are you all doing this morning?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good
So,
morning.
And interestingly, now life, is something else. Daryl, we know each other because he reached out after having seen one of my old broadcasts, and now he's a co-host. So welcome. I'm amped that you're going to be joining me. And Joshua, I'm glad that he's here joining us because he was a public defender for how long? In Hillsborough County. And you worked in Pinellas County too.
Pasco.
Pasco. Okay, well, same circuit. And so he's going to bring, I believe, a good contribution, question-wise, commentary-wise, to this discussion. Lisa, first of all, tell us a little bit. I want a brief history of yourself, your career, so that the voters, the public, can know a little bit about you.
Sure. And good morning again to everyone. I went to Stetson Law School, and while I was there, I did a prosecution clinic, which is basically a fancy way of talking about an internship. And I realized during that clinic that being in the courtroom is what I wanted to do. So I started my career as an assistant state attorney under Bill James. That was back in 1991. And I was there for about a year and a half, got promoted to felony, was doing well. And then politics turned my life upside down because Bill James did not win his reelection bid, and I did not want to work for the incoming state attorney. So I telephoned the newly elected public defender, Julianne Holt, and asked her for a job. And thankfully, she agreed to take a chance on a young prosecutor. And I literally put my personal belongings in a cart and wheeled my stuff down to the other end of the hall and started my career as an assistant public defender. I was there with Ms. Holt for her first 4 years in office. 3 of those years that I was there, I was a chief in that office. So I had the opportunity to participate in the formation and implementation of policy, which was a really interesting time for us. I think that Julie has done some great things in that office, has brought it into the 21st century. But I think that it's time for change. I think it's time for someone to come in and study that office from top to bottom and make the changes that need to be made. I could go on forever, guys, but
And I'm
sure
glad
that
you stopped there.
questions.
I'm glad you stopped there. Exactly. Thank you. Good. So I had no idea that you were at that office and you were chief for some time. That's not said enough. So you had how long were you chief?
3 years.
Okay. So you have experience as doing what your opponent is saying. I have this. He's in the same role that you were. So
Right.
you had experience helping to run that office in the past. Joshua.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Joshua. Yes, I want you to jump in. Daryl, jump in, please. So this is going to be. I want it to be a robust conversation with, so that the public knows what the issues are and why she would maybe be the better candidate.
And I won't be coy. Obviously, I was also participating in this race once upon a time, and I jumped out. But Lisa, I will say this. I think my issue when I was running, and you kind of highlighted a little bit, is that, yes, Rocky's running. He has some leadership experience, a lot. He's been there. He's been a division chief. He's a bureau chief now. You obviously had the time as the division chief. But I'll tell you my experience at the office. I think one of my biggest issues with the office is that the people there who are leading have only learned how to lead as lawyers. So you've come up as a lawyer and you followed other lawyers, and this is how you know how to lead. And I felt that was some of the issue at the office was there was this leadership style that was being passed from one person to the other that wasn't diverse. So the question is how do you plan on addressing that? Because you have a bunch of lawyers and all they know how to do is lead as lawyers, but they haven't had any experience in the outside world leading as CEOs, military, or whatever.
Yeah, I think that, it's interesting that you say that because I have strong feelings about how the office ought to be structured. And, while I hear what you're saying and obviously the people that are going to be working at that office as chiefs and in positions of management, you're not going to find a whole lot of folks that had a previous career the way that you did and had that opportunity to lead under completely different circumstances. But I think that we can all agree that management style starts at the top. And so, the feel that I have for people, my collaborative spirit, the way that I interact with others, I think that sets the tone for management at the office. And, it's my intention to put a whole lot more responsibility on division chiefs than what they have right now. And a lot of that has to do with, again, just a management style and what Julie and Rocky think is the best way to do that. But I really think that if you give your chiefs the opportunity to truly lead and to truly teach, that you're going to see a completely different culture. And in my opinion, a much better one in which, young lawyers are supported and trusted and taught how to do the job, to do the incredibly important job of being on the front lines, defending the Constitution every day. I can't think of many jobs more important than that.
Okay, I want to jump in right now, and I want you to dovetail with me, Joshua, because
Haiti,
sure,
if I could,
go. I yield to you.
I wanted to follow up on it a little bit because I think it does into the story that I have and I like to share with. So, Lisa, you kind of hit on some of the management style there, which was a little bit of issue. And I think Haiti can address this as well. Those of us who left Hillsborough and went over to Sixth Circuit, we saw a whole different world. A lot of us will say that we actually got to be lawyers. I will not take anything away from Julie and Rocky. I'm the lawyer I am today because they taught me everything I learned. But there is no doubt a micromanaging style there that's not conducive to growing more as a lawyer, I would say. And I'll give you a quick story just so you know it. When I went over to Pasco, I had this unbelievable freedom to be a lawyer. And I remember another lawyer came over from Hillsborough and we were sitting in our office and it was probably about 5, 6 o'clock. And our boss came by and he turned to the new lawyer and he was like, why are you still working here? I know Josh works late because he doesn't have a family, but you do. Go home, right? And she let him leave and she walked into my office and she was like, is he playing with me or can I really go home? And I was like, no, if you're done, go home.
Is that it, Joshua?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll follow that. So here, I was in the 13th Circuit, Hillsborough, for a year. I left, not under the I resigned after a year. And let me tell you something. It is micromanaged over the top. And I told the management there that was the case. It was oppressive, almost. And I can testify. Look, some persons that have left there, they're they're inhibited in saying so, but that's what the rumor is, or what the discussion is when you're out casually in the courthouse talking about. I've been asked, where should I apply, Pinellas or the Sixth Circuit or the 13th? And I said, I was there in the Sixth Circuit almost 6 years, and I can confirm what Joshua said. It was freeing. So freeing. I didn't know in the 13th whether it was a supervisor or a proctologist. Okay, they were up my tiny. And it's just, I'm an adult. I just graduated. I'm an adult. I have a law degree. Let me be a lawyer. If I need help, I will go seek supervisory suggestions, help, guidance. So when I went to work for Mr. Dillinger, it was incredibly freeing. And when I got there, had been an exodus of attorneys, at least 8 that I would be able to name. I'm not, but I would be able to. So is that what you're talking about, Lisa, about the change that you intend to bring? There was a quote that I posted this week from Richard Branson. That quote says, train
Haiti,
people.
I
Yes.
wrote that down. I wrote that down before we started because I wanted to talk about that. I think that is such a great quote. But I would add that, when people do leave, when you have trained them up and that they're ready to go, that you share in their joy in that movement to the next level, to their next, whatever it is that they've wanted to do. That's who I want to be. The person that is the biggest cheerleader for these young lawyers that could absolutely be making more money elsewhere, but they come to that office because they believe in the work. Many of them went to law school to be public defenders, and that spirit needs to be appreciated and fostered.
Could you say the quote?
Train people well enough so they can leave. Treat them well enough so they don't want to.
So you commit to that.
Absolutely.
So I want to jump in this conversation and kind of turn it just a slight bit. Lisa, you mentioned in a quote that the root cause you're going to be addressing the root cause of crime, safe reentry and for incarcerated people, and bail reform. How did you conclude, if you can share, how did you come up with those things being the root cause of crime in the community? Was there a study done, or come to that?
So I think that so that was kind of a big sentence on my website where we're talking about some of the things that are important to me. That being, what are the root causes? Looking at issues of bail reform and looking at issues of reentry. And so, I think when you talk about root causes of crime, that you're talking about poverty, lack of stability, homelessness, and these mental health issues, substance abuse issues. And I think that by and large that the public defender's office does a pretty good job of understanding that these are some of the issues that we need to be looking at. I can only speak for myself in saying that my involvement in the community since I've decided to run for public defender has been so eye-opening for me, and frankly such a blessing to see how many people are out there trying to make a difference every day with no goal other than to just be decent human beings and try to make a difference in the world. So I think that, I've had a lot of interesting conversations with people in the community about, reaching out to young people, being there to talk about what happens if you get in trouble. Being in a position to be able to just reach out to the community and be in constant, real, meaningful contact with them, truly engaged with the community, so that we get a better understanding of what people are thinking, what people are experiencing, so that we know how to address those issues if they end up in the criminal justice system.
Good morning, Dave Coleman. Thanks for joining. And if you'd like to call in, there's a call-in number, 727-214-4930. If you'd like to engage with Lisa and pose questions for her, or even in the comments section. Joshua, would you like to follow up with any other questions? Or Daryl, jump in.
Well, I would like. I mean, going back to that root cause thing, I noticed, and even looking at looking at either the budgets, that's meaning the city of Tampa budget, looking at the Hillsborough County, um, um, their scorecard, and all those variables and different things. When I look at these things and I hear this constant statement about affordable housing and affordable this and affordable that, what I don't see being addressed in none of these audiences is the income wage. The income wages that come across for the persons who are being put back in prison or put back in or having mental illness issues, where that part is not being addressed in the context of the equality of equal pay and things in that regard. So if you been in office or been at least a public figure, I think somewhere along the way we need to start having that discussion about the equal pay. I mean, if I graduate from Stetson with you, studies have shown that I am going to get paid less than what you are getting paid based upon societal abnormalities. And that is as I see the root cause as to why I cannot afford the new home, because I don't make enough. I don't make the same pay as the next person.
Well, but I kind of don't. I don't. So, in what context? Because she's running for public defender.
Yeah.
So that office is mandated to represent indigent persons who cannot afford a private attorney. I don't think that by virtue of if she's elected, I don't know that she's gonna within her purview what her role is as a constitutional officer in that office. She's gonna be able to address that.
Well, I'll say this, and Lisa, and I hate this word, and I think all public defenders hate this word. I think the bigger key is how do we get the community, and it's clear that they have this sentiment that when I have a public defender, I have a public pretender, right? The community feels, for many reasons, that the public defender's office is not really representing their best interest. Now, there are some lawyers there that will destroy any lawyer that's making six figures in this world.
Absolutely.
I respect so many of those lawyers. I spend a good deal of my practice with people calling me and saying, hey, my public defender is doing X, Y, and Z. And when they say, my public defender is this, I'm like, I can't do anything better than that person. But I think the community needs to really see what their public defenders are doing from how much they really care. And that was one of the things I was struggling with. It's good to say it on the campaign, but what are you going to do once you're in the office to make the community really feel that?
Listen, and Josh, that has a lot to do with what we were talking about, which is that idea of engagement. And I'm not just talking about me as the elected constitutional officer being out in the community and talking to people and engaging. I'm talking about assistants being out in the community, doing, volunteering, going to meetings, showing their face, understanding, listen, it's a horrible feeling when your client thinks that you're less than because you work at the public defender's office. And, that's something that I think to some extent, you're right. We bring that on ourselves by not engaging, by not truly being out there and trying to get an understanding of what the issues are. And, I fully intend on having a liaison other than myself, because look, I can only be in so many places at once, right? So it can't just fall on me, but it's really important to have somebody that part of their job is to be out in the community and to be listening, and so that people can see that we care, that we know what we're doing, that we're well spoken, that we are well trained, and that there is no drop off whatsoever in just because you're, when I left the public defender's office to go into private practice, obviously I'm the same lawyer, right? It's not like something magical has happened to me now that I'm in private practice. And, I found it really surprising, I guess, that the trust level that your clients have in you because they're paying you money as opposed to getting those services for free. And you can't necessarily change human nature and whether or not people are always going to feel that way. But again, I think it comes down to having those real conversations with the community so that they understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish.
Daryl?
So as you go into the office, you take over. There's already an inherent culture that's going to be there, that's already been resonated. How do you believe you're going to influence and change that culture to see things the way you're seeing it?
Well, I think a lot of it again has to do with, listen, I've been in the courthouse for over 30 years. So, and I am a kind of what you see is what you get kind of person. I've always been extremely honest with folks. And, I think that people that have been in the courthouse with me understand who it is that I am and the things that are important to me. And again, I can't stress enough that I think that, and this is not meant in any way to be a negative statement about Julie and Rocky. Those are hard jobs. Julie is an excellent lawyer, as is Rocky. But, our management styles are just different. We are different human beings, and the way that we interact with others is different. And that personality, those things that are important to me, those things will filter down to others. And you make good choices in who your administration is going to be, people that you trust to be able to share your message and share your beliefs with not just the community, but all the lawyers, all the support staff, all the investigators, everybody that's there, so that we understand the mission and how to accomplish that mission.
Because the truth of the matter, and I'm sorry, I'll yield to you, Joshua. Go ahead, jump in. Was that you?
Yeah, I wanted two things because I think it ties in and it helps with what I asked Lisa the question of. I think one of the issues in the office, and I think they do a good job at diversity, but they can do a better job. And the reason why I tell you is this, where I saw in the 6th that I didn't see in the 13th. I'll tell you two stories that kind of tie in and why I think this could be better. And it's about Rocky, and I put it out there about Rocky. I had went to a diversity conference that actually Julie puts on at Stetson. I can't remember the name of it, but all the attorneys, Julie doesn't put it on. The bar puts it on, but the public defender's office always shows up there. Two of the young lawyers there went to Cooley. Now, we all know Cooley's probably not the best law school in the world, but we have young individuals or older individuals who didn't have the same opportunities as everybody else who are trying to go to law school. And I think the public defender's office is probably the best place for these people who might not have gotten the greatest education to learn how to be a lawyer and then move on to do whatever or stay as a public defender. So I had two individuals, one young black female, one young black male, who came into the office. Later, I invited them over. I said, hey, come by, take a look, walk around, meet some people. This is where you want to be. Rocky happened to be in his office. I knocked on the door. I said, hey, Rocky, got two people coming in. They went to Cooley. They're thinking about coming to join us. Rocky comes in the office. They explain who they are. And after talking to them for 5 minutes, Rocky turns to both of them and says, usually we offer people internships, but because you go to Cooley, you're probably not going to pass the bar exam. So we wouldn't be able to offer you an internship. But, once you pass the bar, we'd be more than happy to get you in here. Oh. That's one. We have another individual, and I'll let him tell his story, but another black individual who tried to come to the office, has dreads. Rocky goes to him during the interview, what are you going to do about your dreads? That hair, right? You have some, and I can go on and on with stories at that office where either quality people are not coming in because they have some kind of rubric race, they're not letting people in, or quality people are leaving because they feel like they're not appreciated and they're just gone out the door. And I have a lot of my friends, I'm not saying they're racist there by any means, but you're not allowing, you already have a problem with people wanting to stay as a public defender. You're not allowing people to nurture and become and get this great staff, which would make the public like you even more. If you have all these black, brown, and whatever in the courtroom that are coming from maybe Cooley, FAMU, or whatever, it's going to make them trust you more.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, Josh. Did that individual with the dreads, did that individual go on to work for the Sixth Circuit?
He I can't remember where he went to, but he's an amazing lawyer right now.
Yeah, because if it's the one that I'm thinking of, he is an amazing lawyer.
Amazing lawyer right now. One of my best friends in the world. But that's my thing. I think there could be a better job, and that was my plan, was to go sit outside of FAMU and sit outside of Cooley and say, I don't care what you did on the bar. I don't care what you did on your LSAT. We want you to come and work for us because you're going to be passionate. So I guess my question to you is, how do you get those numbers up so you can engage in the community? What do you plan on doing with that?
I'm assuming you're asking me that question.
Yes.
Okay. I was part of the hiring and unfortunately occasionally firing process at not just the public defender's office, but also at statewide prosecution, where I worked for 3 or 4 years. Again, in the 90% of that time was in administration. And, you come to recognize that, certainly there are some objective standards, but there are so many great people out there that are not like you, that don't look like you, that don't come from a similar background. And that only adds to that office's ability to serve the public, to have different backgrounds, to have different life experiences. And again, these are young people for the most part. And so they certainly don't have the amount of life experience that, I'm not a young person. So, you sometimes, I think that when people say that there's no substitute for experience, I think all of us that have tried cases over the years can absolutely say that is 100% true. You just, no matter how many cases you try, something's always going to happen that you weren't anticipating. But that idea of embracing differences is so important to me. And, I think, we all have, listen, I'm a conservative dresser. Anybody that pays any attention to that would tell you that is true. But that has nothing to do with how I feel about others coming into that office. At the end of the day, it's about your ability to connect with your clients and your ability to serve your clients. It's not about how you look. Obviously, again, there are objective standards of professionalism. And I'll just give you an example, and this is really kind of goofy, but it kind of ties in with something that Josh said. I noticed over the years that, and this happened after I left the office, that the public defenders had, these, I guess, name tags or badges to get in and out of the courthouse that they would wear on a lanyard around their neck. And, while I appreciate that may have made sense to them from, an ease of access standpoint, I just thought that was crazy. I mean, can you imagine some of the great lawyers that we know, Rick Escobar, Barry Tarrix, Josh Montero, Leslie Samus? Can you imagine those people walking into the courthouse with lanyards around their necks? That doesn't instill any confidence. That sets you apart. There's no reason when someone walks into the courtroom, they shouldn't be able to pick the public defenders out from the private lawyers. Because it makes no sense to distinguish. You are only feeding into that idea that in some way, somehow, the public defenders are less than. And that's what we need to work to change. That there's not a perception that an assistant public defender is less than any other lawyer in that courtroom.
Let me ask you this, just to kind of follow up with what Josh was talking about. Making decisions based on somebody, how they look, their appearance. Who do we credit? Who do we credit for the establishment? Who got the ball rolling on for the Supreme Court to say that this country, the right to counsel requires that the public defender's office be created to provide representation to the poor. Who is that?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I didn't know if you were looking for Gideon or if you were looking for something else. And I mean,
Yeah,
you
who
know,
is
you've
that?
got
Tell us
this.
about that. Tell us about that, right?
Yeah, you've
Who
got
is
this.
that?
You know, yeah, you've got this poor guy that you know is out there trying to represent himself because he can't afford a lawyer. And you know, it's great that you know, Florida, especially recently, has become known for so many negative things.
Amen.
And you know, it's a great thing that that's one of the great things that the state of Florida is known for, because that's where that case originated. And he gets all the way to the United States Supreme Court and finally convinces those justices that indigent human beings should have a lawyer appointed to them that they don't have to pay for.
And he's incarcerated, and he doesn't use nice little paper
Right.
and a word to type up just on a paper with a pencil, and he got the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Okay, so judgments shouldn't be made about appearance. You have no idea with the character or the competency, the skills, the intellect level of someone based on how they look.
Yeah.
Okay, mental health. You have some idea. Listen, when I start hearing about comparisons in experience, I think you have like a 10-year head start on your opponent. That's not to say anything. Look, he's been there for a significant amount of time, but so did you. You had 3 years being side by side with Miss Holt. And look, the truth of the matter is the training there for the 1 year that I was there, the training was amazing. Okay? It was amazing. Okay? But what I was able to go over to the other side of the bridge and immediately handle a caseload without micromanagement and try cases because of that training. So kudos to them on that. But it does the office no good to train people that will eventually leave because they have an issue with being micromanaged and having people on their back. And you want a lawyer to not have listen. The stress in our profession is out of control over the top. Okay, you don't need that, especially when you have a high caseload serving the indigents that you're assigned to serve. But you're well prepared to undertake addressing the mental health office in the PD's office. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's something that I've actually given a lot of thought to, and I think it starts with a culture change, a shift in the way that the assistants feel about the work that they're doing and whether or not they are trusted and appreciated. That goes a long way. You know, when you've had a rough day in court and you come back and you know you're not feeling like your chief, the felony bureau chief, the public defender understands what it is that you do every day, understands that in the trenches mentality that you have and the relationships that you develop with the people in your division, with you know your fellow assistant public defenders and even the state attorneys and the judge. You know, it's a big deal, and it's really kind of a cool thing. I mean, being an assistant public defender and being on the front lines every day and doing that work with fellow assistants is really cool. And you get close with the people that are in your division. And you want to be able to come back to the office and have that same feeling about your boss. That's not a lot to ask, you know? And so I think that, and again, you know, it's not my intention to sound negative. I mean, I'm talking about who I am as a person. It's not my intention to. I don't want anyone to feel like I'm focusing on anyone else, whether it be Rocky or Julie or anybody else in a position of administration. I'm just talking about how I would do things and the things that are important to me. And
So
I
No,
think that,
there's no doubt that Julian Holt, since taking the reins of that office for the time that she's been there, which has been decades, like 30 years, she's
yeah,
done a lot of good
yeah,
in the office as far as the administration, for sure, with technology,
yeah,
okay, with mental health. Her attorneys have a reputation of they litigate, they throw down.
Yes.
That's the
absolutely.
truth.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so we are going to also highlight the positives. Listen, and Rocky Brancato, he's invited here too. If you want to come on and kind of speak to some of the things that have been, because that's fairness. I'm totally about fairness. You could come on also and address the voters on any of these issues, any issues that you'd like to talk about. I want you to, lastly, the only other thing that I'm gonna,
I
we've
got.
been running on 36, and I'm gonna leave it you guys to whatever questions. This is the last one that I'm gonna
Okay.
ask Lisa about fiscal responsibility. The
I was gonna-
taxpayers
that's where I was gonna go.
care about
Yes.
an office being able to run a budget and save as much as they can while operating that office to save taxpayers' money. Speak to
Haiti,
that.
can I add on to it because
Of
mine has
course.
to do with the
Yes,
budget
yes,
too.
yes.
I think, Lisa, one of the things I learned when I did go over the six that I would say Julie was doing, I guess, a lot better than everybody else was it seemed like she had a bigger budget than everybody. And that, to me, when I'm thinking when I was running is maybe some of the things that are happening at the office at the lower level, because we're at the lower level, it's happening because she's able to get this big budget. Because when you go over to six, the budget wasn't the same. If I wanted to hire experts, it took a lot longer. If I wanted to go and have an investigator go out and do something, it took a lot longer. So Hillsborough had this reputation that we did a lot of the things we did, which was we had to file a lot of motions. We had to go to trial because that made it look like we needed a bigger budget, which is true that we did, which indeed gave us the bigger budget, which made us operate better than most of the other offices. So I know there's going to be a struggle, I think, when you try to implement some stuff to make people's lives easier, but that may take away from the budget. And now you can't do some of the great things that they do there, which is I never had to question. I never got questioned if I wanted an investigator. Never got questioned if I wanted an expert. If I wanted to go get a big printout of this crazy picture, Josh, you got it. They always gave me money. But six, that money wasn't there.
Yeah, I think that, when you talk about, basically what you're talking about is performance-based budgeting, which is, something that not only was I familiar with at the public defender's office, but also when I was at statewide prosecution. So I think that you're absolutely right that, some of those quotas, for lack of a better word, about motions and affidavits of indigency, those kinds of issues, I think you're absolutely right. It's greatly contributed to Julie's numbers, and Julie's numbers have always been big. But I don't think that that's only attributable to performance-based budgeting. I think it's also attributable to Julie's ability to talk to people and Julie's ability to advocate for the office. And I don't think that Julie's the only person on the planet that possesses those skills. Okay. I think that, I think that if you look at the numbers of the money that I've raised in just a few months of being a candidate, I think it speaks to my ability to interact with people and talk to them about why we need money, why my campaign needs money, why that office needs money. And again, to be able to share with people, because look, at the end of the day, you think that a lot of folks out there care about the public defender's race. Unfortunately,
They don't.
They probably don't. They're much more interested in things that affect them, like city council races and school board races and county commission races. And so it's a challenge to get people to care about the public defender's office.
Yeah, they don't care until they need to care, because what if a loved one gets in trouble and then they need the office of the public defender's office?
Yeah.
I want you to speak, since you touched on it, and how, I know that every now and again I have gotten in the loop as far as how much your opponents raised, and I think you've outraised them already. Yes, and you've been
more than double at the last time that we reported.
So I know that Miss Holt is pretty fierce every year to go up to Tallahassee and fight for that budget that Joshua compliments, for the attorneys to be able to do what they need to do to competently and effectively represent their clients. You talked about quotas. Talk about that. Is that going to be tied into promotions if you're the PD?
You know, you put me on a spot here, but I'm going to tell
Joshua's
you.
laughing. Joshua's laughing, but no, let's speak. I'm not putting you on the spot. I mean,
No, listen.
there's
I
yeah.
can answer the question. I'm not a fan of quotas. I'm not a fan of quotas of any kind, and that's why, you know, part at the beginning of this conversation, you know, when we were talking about how I might do things differently. Again, we're talking about having an administration and having a hierarchy, and that's not a great word, but you know, when you talk about being perhaps chief centric, giving chiefs more authority. Listen, these are the guys that are in the courtroom every single day with their assistants. These are the people that know whether or not an assistant is cutting it with how they communicate with the clients, whether or not there are constant complaints from clients about a particular assistant because they don't communicate well, or because they're not getting the job done, because they're not going to the jail to visit their clients, because they're not filing the motions that need to be filed. That is the job for the chief to then deal with in an appropriate way. If you've got a strong chief that is interacting with their people every single day, which of course they are, but not just in the courtroom, but also from a supervisory, from a teaching standpoint, that chief knows whether or not that person is going to the jail, whether or not that person is filing the motions. These are things that's the person that's on the ground with these folks, not the person that's sitting, you know, in their office and doing many things, you know, all day long, but the person that's truly on the ground. And that's the person that's in the best position to be able to report back to the felony bureau chief or the chief assistant or the public defender about the kind of work that particular assistants are doing. There's absolutely no reason to have a set number of how many times you need to go to the jail every month. And, you know, it's interesting because I just had a conversation with a private lawyer telling me that last time they went to visit a client, that they were told that there was a 2-hour wait to get into one of the rooms to have a contact visit with the client. And I said, well, when did you go? And they were like, oh, well, it was like, you know, it was like yesterday. And I said, you know why that's happening? Because it's the end of the month. And when it's the end of the month, all the assistant public defenders are running out to the jail to make sure that they get, you know, their quota satisfied. And that's crazy, because you should be having regular contact with your clients because they need to have regular contact with you, not because somebody told you you have to hit a magic number.
I'm guilty. The late night.
Right?
I'm guilty.
Lisa, I want to ask a question. I want you to because again, when you talk about the amount of people who are going to vote in this space, and we think about who our voters are and the voters who we're trying to push to get out as a younger generation and trying to get that number picked up. So because they don't respond to this particular race, can you be vulnerable with us and tell us about who Lisa is, and why did you get into this space? Because that would allow those young voters, that would allow, you know, we got a lot of transplants into Tampa who don't know you from way back when. So tell us about Lisa. Why did Lisa show up at the doors of Stetson Law to become this attorney and ultimately push down this street that you're on now? Because that allows people to connect with you when they see you at Walmart or at Publix.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you know, quite honestly, and I talked about this at my initial kickoff, you know, I was raised in what would probably be fairly characterized as a lower middle class family. My father tried to start a business, and that business struggled mightily. There were nights, honestly, where I did my homework by the light of a kerosene lamp because we were trying to save money on electricity. So, that is what motivated me to go to law school. I was lucky to be a good student. I was lucky to have a family that, while they didn't have money, they certainly appreciated the value of education. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. And that's because my parents pushed me and taught me that I could be whatever it is that I wanted to be. And so the primary motivation, quite honestly, for me to go to law school was to be able to make a decent living and to be able to, support a family and to be able to, not only take care of a future family of my own, but be able to care for my parents. And so I think that gives me, listen, I appreciate that there are um, many things, many circumstances, and we've already touched on that, that might cause a person to um, veer off, the right track, to potentially commit a crime or be in the company of others who are doing things they shouldn't do. Um, but I think that my insight into not having been raised with a silver spoon in my mouth and having that opportunity to make a difference. Again, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and the system still has not beaten the idealism out of me. And I think um, that in order to get people to care about this race, you have to be inspirational. They have to understand that, the reasons, and you hit the nail on the head, Daryl. I mean, is why are you doing this? Why are you giving up, a lucrative private practice to go back to public service? And that's what it's about for me. And I always hesitate to say that because it sounds so cliche when, you say, I want to give back to the community. I want to make a difference. Listen, what I do every day right now in private practice, I do make a difference. And that's what kind of keeps me going when you have those rough days where you're thinking, what in the world, am I doing with my life? But to have the opportunity to do that on a bigger scale and to have the opportunity to perhaps inspire, young lawyers to, really appreciate and want to do this tough job. That's why I'm in it.
Yeah, I think that was beautiful, Lisa. The idea, we as lawyers, if you have that in your heart, we all get it, right? Why would you defend this criminal? And actually, Daryl and I on the Hillsborough County Black Chamber of Commerce together, he's my president, and we had a young lady that said that to me, right? How can you defend all of these criminals? And I said, we don't defend, in my thought process, we don't defend bad people. We defend the things that people do that are bad, right?
Yeah.
And if you can get to the core, people don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to go commit a crime, right? That's
Right.
not normal. Something went wrong. And if you have that feeling in you that you want to help them with whatever that was wrong was, whether they were struggling to have lights in their house, whether mom and dad went there, whatever it is, if you have that sentiment in your heart, there's no better place to be than that public defender's office, because those
Absolutely.
are people who need the help. So I love that, and that's key. Why would you go away from doing what you're doing, making a lot of money, because you have that feeling and you want to share that with everybody, and you want to see. I had a young public defender come up to me yesterday and said, hey, why did you jump out the race? And I said, it pains my heart all the time because I love this office. I love what you guys do. I love that we're able to help the people that need the help. So I love that you were able to say that. I will say this about my president. I'll do this invite and he can get mad at me because you would probably be the first person that we would do this. But I'd like to invite you to come out to one of our events at the Hillsborough County Black Chamber of Commerce. It would be next month. Let the members speak. And this is a time when the members come out and speak. You don't necessarily have to come on and put a platform on, but just to see some of the young people who are trying to start businesses in the community that may need your help eventually. Hopefully they don't, but I think it would be a good opportunity for you, Lisa, to come out and see what we're doing over there. And if the president gets mad at me, it is what it is. I'm the legal consultant, so I get to say what we can and can't do. And I'm saying we can't do it.
I concur. I think it'd be very valuable And I really appreciate what you said in terms of um, you did what you came into this space and you said, you know what, I'm coming to help my parents out. I'm that guy every day when I wake up and hit the streets, and all the things that I do. I think about my mother back in East St. Louis and her puppy. That is, that's why I do what I do, to be able to help support and make sure that she has a better quality of life. And I think, and the reason why I asked that question is because that now attaches people to you outside of a courtroom. Now, when I see you, I can see that I can visualize seeing someone doing something to help the common good of their family. And that makes, and I believe, just as Josh said, no one wakes up and say, hey, I'm gonna do this bad thing. I think
Right.
people get up and they get into circumstances, situations that cause them to need the defense thereof. But outside of that, Lisa, when people know you, when they understand your vulnerabilities and what makes you do what you do, that makes people move a little bit differently, and they see you differently in the marketplace, past the courtroom. So thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've almost gone a full hour. There's a couple of minutes left before the complete hour. So I'm gonna leave the last minutes to you, Lisa, so that you can address the public, the voters, and tell them why you're the candidate that they should vote for next year during the election on
I
election day.
appreciate that. I appreciate that, Haiti. And I think that we've touched on a lot of things already this morning that are important to me. But I think that we can all agree, no matter what walk of life you come from, if you don't embrace change, things aren't going to go well for you. And lots of times, lots of times there are a lot of people who are resistant to change, but change can be a beautiful thing. And we're talking about, again, an office that has been run the same way for 30 years. And again, Julie has done great things with that office. But I think that there are greater things that can be done. And, the public deserves a candidate that is not beholden to history, that isn't beholden to their predecessor, that is willing to study that office from top to bottom and make the changes that need to be made. And I think that that's probably the primary reason why I got into this, aside from being a huge believer in change. Even though it's difficult for me too, there were many times when I would move from one division to another at the public defender's office or at the state attorney's office, and you'd be in front of a new judge and you'd have different prosecutors, and you'd be thinking, wow, I just really got, I got my feet under me here in this division, and now I'm being moved to another division. And that kind of stuff is scary. But that's what makes you a great lawyer. And, being able to respond to change is what makes you a strong human being. And that's where I'm coming from with, my candidacy, that I think that it's important. And I think the public deserves that change. Again, Rocky has been running on a platform of, I've been here, I've been doing it, I've been, Julie's right hand man for however many years, and I don't doubt that Rocky's fingerprints are on uh, policies, good things that have been done at that office. But again, when a person stands up and touts the accomplishments of their boss, I mean, that doesn't tell you a whole lot about who he is as an individual and how that office might be run by Rocky Brancato. So, I think I've made it clear the things that are important to me. Um, and, I hope that the community responds to that idea of the necessity of change.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for joining us. I am going to go ahead and put the URL on the screen so that the public can go and um, they can know more, read more about you, contact you.
I don't think we talked about when's the actual election, Lisa.
It's August of 2024. I'm embarrassed to tell you I don't know the exact date off the top of my head because I can't remember, but it's August of 2024.
Oh, okay. August of 2024 is the election in Hillsborough County. She's running in Hillsborough County for Hillsborough County Public Defender. And the URL, the address, the domain address is lisa4publicdefender.com. There, it's on the screen on my bottom left. And the election will be next year, August of 2024. So that just get acquainted with the race and the candidates so that you can make the best decision. And again, your opponent is invited on here. This is a platform where everyone gets to come on and speak and present for the benefit. This is for the benefit of the public so that they're an informed electorate. Okay, was that funny? I didn't intend that to be funny, but
No.
it caused some humor. Okay, so thanks for joining, Daryl Heisch. Thank you for co-hosting with me. You're going to be regularly on, and in the future, you're also going to be hosting yourself and
Yes.
bringing on interesting candidates yourself, and I'll be acting as production engineer behind the scenes. And Joshua Montero, I'd like for you also to consider coming on regularly when time permits so that you can tell me who you think would be great to come on to speak to important issues in the community. Heidi Oropesa, your humble host, Florida You Judge. Thank you for tuning in and have a great rest of your Saturday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.